Westminster has just exploded, and Keir Starmer's political career didn't just stumble tonight, it was publicly executed by his own party. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because what just happened could reshape British politics for years to come. What began as an ordinary week in Parliament has turned into one of the most dramatic implosions in modern UK history. A no-confidence vote, a rebellion not from the opposition, but from Starmer's own benches. And at the heart of it all, a betrayal so deep, so politically radioactive, it's ripped Labour apart from the inside out. Just 72 hours ago, everything looked calm. Starmer was in control. Labour seemed united. Brexit appeared settled, at least that's what we were told. The government's messaging was simple. Focus on the economy, tackle NHS backlogs, ease the cost of living. On the surface, it looked like stability. But behind those polished press briefings and carefully worded speeches, something else was brewing. Something that would soon detonate the entire government from within. Because while the cameras showed calm, the reality behind closed doors was chaos. Then it happened. Leaked documents, confidential memos and internal drafts landed in the press like a political bombshell. They exposed what many Brexit voters feared, but hoped wasn't true. Keir Starmer had been secretly negotiating with Brussels, and not over small print or technical adjustments. These were sweeping reversals, the kind that would undo the very foundations of Brexit itself. Fishing rights quietly handed back to the EU. Trade rules rewritten to align once again with European standards. A slow, quiet surrender of sovereignty. All while the public was told everything was fine. The revelations didn't stop at fishing rights. The leaks went further and went far darker. Trade rules were being quietly realigned with European standards, effectively reversing years of negotiation that were meant to make Britain independent again. And then came the real shocker, buried in the fine print of those leaked documents. There were talks about allowing European judges to arbitrate disputes on British soil. Think about that for a moment. The very sovereignty millions voted to reclaim in 2016, the core promise of taking back control, was quietly being handed back, clause by clause, meeting by meeting, behind closed doors. Starmer wasn't just making policy changes, he was rewriting the meaning of Brexit itself. And when the public found out, it wasn't just anger, it was betrayal. The reaction, nuclear, not from the Conservatives, not from Nigel Farage or Reform UK, but from inside the Labour Party itself, from the same loyal MPs who had defended Starmer through every scandal, every policy failure, every PR disaster. In a matter of hours, those same defenders became his fiercest critics. Private Labour WhatsApp groups exploded with fury. Long-time allies were suddenly calling for emergency meetings. Shadow ministers whispered in corridors, phones buzzing with panic. And within just 24 hours, the unthinkable happened. Something no one in Westminster had truly imagined. A formal motion of no confidence against their own leader. One senior Labour MP called it the most traumatic day in the party's modern history. Another admitted quietly, that was the moment we realised we'd been lied to by the man we trusted most. Starmer's inner circle was collapsing, not under the pressure of opposition attacks, but under the weight of his own decisions. And what followed next would turn Labour's rebellion into a full-blown political war. The rebellion spread through Westminster like wildfire. Signatures for the no-confidence motion didn't trickle in. They flooded in. And they weren't coming from the usual suspects, the backbench rebels or the fringe wings of the party. This was different. Senior shadow ministers signed their names without hesitation. Veteran MPs, the same figures who once served under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, added theirs too. Even those Starmer had personally elevated to positions of power, people he once trusted as allies, now turned their backs. This wasn't some small organised protest. It was a full-scale mutiny, and the driving force behind it wasn't ideology or ambition. It was one word: betrayal. Inside Westminster, the atmosphere was toxic. Multiple insiders described it as poison in the air. Committee rooms became battlegrounds. Shouting matches broke out, echoing down the marble corridors of Parliament. Doors slammed so hard they rattled portraits off the walls. MPs who used to sit shoulder to shoulder couldn't even make eye contact. The trust that held the Labour Party together had completely disintegrated. One aide recalled walking past a group of senior Labour figures and overhearing one of them mutter, "He's finished. We're not going down with him." Another insider described it perfectly. It's like the party's turned the gun on itself, and everyone's finger is on the trigger at once. And what's perhaps most shocking, this rebellion wasn't coordinated by any single faction. It wasn't a Corbynite uprising or a Blairite coup. It was spontaneous combustion, left, right and centre of the party united in outrage. The motion of no confidence gathered momentum like an avalanche. By the time Starmer's inner circle realised the scale of the revolt, it was already unstoppable. Westminster had descended into civil war, and as the chaos erupted inside Parliament, the British public watched in disbelief and anger. Out on the streets the fury was real, raw and rising by the hour. While Westminster was tearing itself apart, the anger outside was even louder, and far more personal. In towns like Sunderland, Hartlepool and Grimsby, the fury was boiling over. These were the same working-class communities that swung to Labour in 2024, towns that gave Starmer a second chance on one simple promise, to protect Brexit. And now they felt stabbed in the back. This wasn't some abstract Westminster argument about trade clauses or legal wording. This was real life, real people in real communities, watching what they fought for being quietly traded away. They remembered every promise their local Labour MPs made. We'll honour your vote. We'll defend your sovereignty. And now it looked like all those words meant nothing. In Grimsby, one fisherman summed up the feeling of an entire region. His voice shook with anger as he told reporters, "We voted to take our country back in 2016. We trusted Labour to protect that. And now look, they tried to give it away again. We won't forget this ever." That single quote became the rallying cry of a movement. Within hours, social media was ablaze. Hashtags like Starmer out and your Brexit betrayal shot to the top of trending lists. Clips of furious voters confronting their MPs outside constituency offices went viral. Memes mocking Starmer flooded timelines. The internet was turning on him in real time. And then came the protests. What began as a handful of angry voices outside Parliament grew into hundreds, and by nightfall thousands. Union Jacks waved in the freezing air as chants of "Traitor! Traitor!" echoed across Parliament Square. Banners reading "Respect Brexit" and "Starmer betrayed Britain" lined the gates. But this wasn't just about Keir Starmer anymore. It was about something much bigger, trust in democracy itself. Millions of people had voted for something, and once again they felt ignored by those in power. And as that outrage spread, Starmer's political rivals could smell blood in the water. The stage was set for a brutal power struggle, one that would reshape British politics overnight. Inside the House of Commons, the tension was unbearable. Every seat filled, every camera fixed. The kind of silence that only happens when history is about to be written. As MPs filed through the lobbies to cast their votes, there were no cheers, no jeers, not even whispers. Just the echo of footsteps, the soft shuffle of papers, and the heavy weight of what everyone knew was coming. When the Speaker finally stood to announce the result, you could almost feel the country holding its breath. And then the numbers were read. Gasps filled the chamber. Keir Starmer had lost. Not by a slim margin, not by a few defectors, but by a landslide so decisive it left no room for spin or denial. His leadership was finished. Some MPs sat frozen, faces pale under the chamber lights. Others slipped out quietly through side exits, avoiding the swarm of cameras waiting outside. And a few long-time loyalists broke down in tears, not out of sympathy for Starmer, but out of grief for what their party had just become. Starmer himself didn't move. He just sat there, staring straight ahead, expression fixed, as if refusing to believe what had just unfolded before his eyes. Then came the chaos. Within seconds, phones across Britain lit up with breaking news alerts. Starmer ousted in historic no-confidence vote. News anchors scrambled to rewrite their scripts live on air. Social media exploded. And outside Parliament, the protesters who'd been chanting all day erupted in triumph. But beneath the noise and celebration, something darker was happening, something far more dangerous for Britain. Because this wasn't just about one politician losing power, it was about the collapse of trust. Trust in Parliament. Trust in leadership. Trust in the idea that when the people vote for something, their government will actually honour it. That trust across Britain is now shattered. Inside Labour, the collapse was immediate. The party was in free fall, splintering into warring camps before the Speaker's gavel had even hit the table. Some MPs called for a return to traditional socialism, claiming Labour lost its soul the day it turned its back on working-class voters. Others demanded a centrist reset, a clean slate, a way to rebuild credibility with business leaders and international partners. The result? Open warfare. Leadership campaigns launched before Starmer's chair had even gone cold. Accusations of treachery flew in every direction, and as Labour tore itself apart, Reform UK rose rapidly, feeding off every headline, every scandal, every ounce of chaos. Nigel Farage was already positioning himself as the voice of the betrayed voter, and for millions, that message was landing. If Labour continues to implode and Reform fills the vacuum, Britain could be on the brink of something seismic, the end of the two-party system as we know it. A political order that stood for generations might finally be collapsing, all because of one man's secret deal that never should have happened. As dawn broke over Westminster, the cold morning light cut through the fog, and there he was. Keir Starmer, stepping out of Downing Street for the very last time. Camera shutters clicked in rapid bursts, each flash capturing the same haunting image. A man once hailed as the steady hand of British politics, now reduced to its latest casualty. Protesters shouted from behind metal barriers, their voices echoing across Whitehall. For a leader who had promised to restore trust and heal division, this was the walk of political exile. His downfall didn't come from his rivals. It came from within, from his own decisions, his own miscalculations, his own quiet betrayal. Those secret negotiations, those broken promises, and that fatal underestimation of the anger brewing across the country. He believed he could rewrite Brexit in the shadows, without facing the wrath of those who fought for it. He thought people would forget. He was catastrophically wrong. And now a chilling question hangs over Britain. If Brexit can take down yet another political giant, who's next? Because make no mistake, this story is far from over. Labour's leadership race is already turning vicious. Allies are turning into enemies overnight. Shadow ministers are making phone calls, cutting deals, and quietly assembling campaign teams. This isn't a smooth transition of power, it's a political battlefield forming in real time. Meanwhile, Reform UK is capitalising on the chaos, their polling numbers climbing by the hour. The Conservatives, still wounded from their own internal wars, are sharpening their knives and preparing to strike back into relevance. The fallout from this no-confidence vote won't fade. It will echo through British politics for years to come. Because this wasn't just a leadership collapse. It was a reckoning. And as one chapter of British politics closes, another far more unpredictable one begins. So before you go, tell me honestly, was Starmer's downfall justified, or did Labour just commit political suicide? Your answer might predict where Britain goes next. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist, every power play, and every political earthquake before it hits the news cycle, subscribe right now. Because this story is only getting started.